Hello and welcome to another episode of The Defenders on Sansad TV. And we're looking at a subject which has very much been in the news in India all of last week and this is the massive display of air power at Aero India in Bengaluru, which is being hailed as Asia's biggest air defense show. More importantly, it projected the ability of India to innovate, to buy, and to show to the world that we are also willing to export and will soon be counted amongst the leading exporters of the world. What will it take for India to achieve those targets spelt out by the distinguished Prime Minister and the Honorable Raksha Mantri? And we have two experts who will help us understand that. We have with us Mr. Sunil Mishra. Welcome once again on the show, sir. He is the Director General of the Society of Indian Defence Manufacturers. But more important also is the fact that he engages both with the private sector and the DPSUs. So he'll be able to give us a balanced perspective on whose requirements are what and where are the stumbling blocks. And we have the very distinguished Air Marshal Chopra, who is the Director General of the Centre for Air Power Studies. And I've had the good fortune of sitting next to him on several other debates, and I've always found his remarks extremely insightful. So, Air Marshal, sir, the first question automatically will go to you, that we had a range of companies that were displaying their products. Of course, some of them were constantly being projected in newspapers and television. This included the big American contingent, the traditionally big Russian contingent, but there were also the Europeans, and there were also others who were willing to enter the market, such as India's own defense manufacturing strength that comes from companies that are fast galloping into the big league. The question to my mind is, what is it that has changed? Why is it that so many of them have suddenly made a beeline for India, when even if they hadn't come in the past, we used to go seeking their products in their own home areas?
Thank you, Maroof, for getting me on this show once again, The Defenders, a very popular show in the country. Yes, I've just returned from Aero India, and I had a chance to meet a large number of manufacturers and the Air Force delegations that came from different countries. Biggest show not only in Asia, also the biggest Aero India ever. Over 700 companies, more than 30 countries, and large number of over 250 MOUs signed. So huge event. And I must tell you, undoubtedly, India is one of the largest aviation markets in the world. Everybody is wooing us, whether it is the Western Bloc, whether it's the Eastern companies like the Russians. So they were present in a large numbers. And I think one new thing this time was the very heavy presence of the Americans. They had brought a large number of aircraft. We saw the first time in the history of Aero India that a fifth generation fighter, the F-35 came, not only came, he flew every day. There was a male pilot, there was a female pilot, they flew alternate days. Very impressive display. We had the B-1Bs, which flew in formation, and we had the KC-46 tanker, which had been brought along by them, and of course the F-16 did a great demonstration, though F-21 is what they are offering, and they had the F-18 that was also on display. The companies, the Lockheed, the Boeing, the GE, three world's biggest companies, they were present and they were wooing and they were trying to impress everybody. And I must tell you that the feeling was that many thought initially that F-35 perhaps is an offer, but no, when we spoke to some of the delegations, the F-35 is just to say the Americans are trying to show us the technology, they are trying to show us the capability, but they are keen that we first get into the fighter ecosystem. Some fighter aircraft like the F-21 or F-18, we all know that they already have a huge presence in our transport fleet, the C-17, the C-130 in helicopters, Chinook, we have the MH-60 of the Navy, we have the Apache. So they are already big and in civil side, the VVIP aircraft, the BBJ, the Boeing 777 of the Prime Minister, they are all from America. And of course, in the airlines, we all heard that just yesterday, the Tatas have announced that Air India will buy a large number of Boeing and Airbus aircraft. So there is a huge market both for fighters and civil aircraft, and I must tell you that the Americans have been pushing. And as you asked, that there are the fighter competitors. We know that the RFP has still to go out for the new 114 aircraft that Indian Air Force is looking at. 6 of them are old aircraft which had participated in the MMRCA context, but the new entrance, the F-18 has been, F-15 has been offered now by the Americans. So there is this entire dynamics. I think we need to talk more about it as we go along.
Yeah, so, well, thank you very much for that encyclopedic assessment of what was there on display. And interestingly, what a lot of people don't know, that even civil aviation aircrafts make up Aero India, although all the focus of attention is largely hogged up by military and fighter aircrafts. Mishra Saab, two questions built into my assessment is, one is, India is asking people to come in and join us on the bandwagon with defense partnerships. And this is based on the repeated comments made by various dignitaries, including the Raksha Mantri, and has looked for foreign nations to help us. I mean, some of us do understand that even in transfer of technologies on a scale of 1 to 10, we are probably in the range of 6, 7, but we still need to go to that level of 8, 9 and 10, where partnerships would be very important for us to take that leap. And the other is, there was a comment by the Raksha Mantri who said, we want to build with you, we want to create with you, and we want to develop with you. Please elaborate.
Maroof, thank you for having us on the show. I've just returned from Aero India. Very, very impressive show. And you're right that the whole attention and focus is on the military side, but it also has a civil side to it. One important factor before I come to your question is that Indian products were also on showcase.
Yes.
So there was a Tejas.
Yes.
There was Prachand, and very impressive show which they gave. There were African nations and number of foreign ministers who were also here. And I also feel that this show showcased Indian present capabilities which are good enough for a number of countries.
Yeah, for example, Egypt is looking to buy the Tejas.
Correct. So this show was able to showcase our strength as to where we are today. And there is a huge market which was present in terms of nations, their defense ministers and their service chiefs, etc., who went back very, very impressed with what they saw.
That's good.
Because at those price points, they can't afford to go to Europeans and the Americans to buy what they need. So this was one major aspect to it. Second is on our side, I think our needs are well defined. We today have the advantage of having a very, very big shopping bag. When you add up the requirements of the Air Force requirements and those of the civil aviation,
yeah,
the purse which is going to open up, whether it is from private companies or from government exchequer, it is all going from the nation.
Ji.
So we as a buyer are probably the largest buyer today of aircrafts in the world. So whether it is the Americans or the Europeans, whosoever is in the market to sell to us, we are in a very good position to negotiate.
That is well known. I mean, even CIPRI figures have been indicating very clearly, and it is not just air products, air power products, but we are also looking at a whole lot of other items to fulfill our inventory for the Navy and the Army also. And one of the areas which is a common area is helicopter products. For example, I'm told the requirement is of 800 helicopters. Now, that's no mean feat. And, you know, people find the numbers in India, and I've interacted with people abroad, and they just shake their head in disbelief and the capacity of India to take that line and fulfill the market's aspirations. But I'll come back to you again in terms of what role do you feel the SIDM plays in helping India achieve its ambitions both for developing and exporting. But back to you, sir.
Yeah.
F-35, the US pavilion, and there was F-21, I believe. There is also the push by the Americans for the F-18 Hornet for the Navy. And of course, now you mentioned the F-15. And of course, some aircrafts that we've bought from the Air Force in the past few years, the C-17, the C-130s, have also been used for headline-making civilian initiatives, such as getting Indian students from Ukraine. Yes. So, where is it that we are going to go next with the Americans?
Yeah. You know, before I speak about the Americans, let me add a few words of what Sunil has, mentioned. That is the aircraft production ecosystem in the country. You know, with the LCA become successful, 1A is ready, already flying, only the physical production for the Air Force has to start. The LCA Mark II, the AMCA, they're on drawing boards. Of course, some funds are required. So, ecosystem for fighters is in place. Only we have to launch or we have to increase production. So, there is an ecosystem. As far as helicopters, 4 helicopters flew in Aero India. The Dhruv flew, the Rudra flew, the Prachand flew, and we had the LUH, which is still to be named, flew. All 4 of them flew in the Aero India. A huge factory has been set up, inaugurated by the Prime Minister of India. You're saying 800, in fact, some even saying up over 1,000 helicopters required. We are currently building only 30 helicopters a year. We need to scale up to 60 to 70 helicopters a year. There are private buyers. So, huge market, and we are in place. And similarly, with C-295 coming in, for production in India, the transport ecosystem will also, improve in times to come. Coming back to the Americans, currently we have over 60% of Indian Air Force, which is Russian origin. A small percentage of Indian, that is the LCA, and the rest are the Western. I have been doing my own assessment. I feel in the long term, that is a period of 15 to 20 years, we should reduce the Russian basket. And the final basket that I look at 15 years down the line, it should be 40% Indian, 30% Western, 30% Russian. So this is the kind of target that India has to set. Yeah. As far as the American aircraft, which is your basic question is.
No, I was basically trying to say, why suddenly they've put the whole infantry in front of us?
Correct.
Is it because they feel they are nearing a great deal or they are desperate for the deal?
I will tell you, since the Americans have already got into the transport and helicopter ecosystem, they are very, very keen to get a fighter through. Now, they know that the Navy requires 57 fighters, deck-based fighters. Indian Air Force wants 114. It's a huge order. They have 2 aircraft. Both are at least 50 years old. They're F-18 and F-16, but they've been modernized, and in their latest versions are competitors. They are as good as the other. But question is, should India at this time be adding yet another type? We already have 7 types of fighters in Indian Air Force inventory. The Chinese, the Pakistanis, they're all reducing the inventories to 3 to 4 types of aircraft. I think long term we have to do, but notwithstanding that, the Americans are keen that we buy the F-21 for Air Force, F-18 for the Navy. And they are not offering F-35. They feel that because we bought S-400 and various other reasons, they are not yet keen to hand over a 5th generation aircraft to us. But look at our position now. If they were to make such an offer and we were to actually accept, where does our AMCA go? So there are many issues that need to be sorted out before the final decision is taken. Chances are that many of the competitors for the 114 aircraft will be similar. Technically, they will all perhaps clear, but there will be commercial issues, there will be transfer of technology issues, and we all know that one area that we are very keen to get transfer technology, that is engines. And I must tell you that I met all the engine representatives, the GE, the Rolls-Royce, and the Safran. All 3 have been speaking to India, but Safran is in the lead because they have been speaking for a much longer time. So Safran is saying that they are willing to transfer technology. The engine will be built in India. It will be an Indian proprietary. But the kind of money some of them are asking is so exorbitant that if we were to invest such money of our own, in our own R&D, perhaps we should be having an engine very quickly. So there are issues. We are trying, the country has been till now wanting to link the engine technology transfer with the fighter aircraft deal. Whether we will be able to achieve or not is not very clear. This is a hard decision, but the request for proposal for this 114 aircraft is still to go out, and whenever it goes out, after that takes at least 5 to 6 years before the aircraft can induct. So it's an exercise. Whatever we do, we need to do it very, very quickly. Yes.
I know time is of a premium, because I remember telling people in London once, on a happy day, you'll be able to get a deal in 8 years. On an unhappy day, you're looking at double the time.
Yeah.
That was the experience with the Rafale deal, as we all know.
Yeah.
But Mr. Mishra, now we have inventory dependence on Russians. You mentioned that also. The fact that we have a supply chain issue which we need to guard against, considering two factors. One is the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, and would that delay the supply chain of parts and some of the military frontline equipment that we are used to getting from the Russians. The second is that the Russians were also there at Aero India in a big way. So obviously we have more than 270 Sukhoi aircrafts, which is the mainstay of the Air Force. And I'm told a lot of money has gone into upgrading the Sukhois. So that is an issue that must be pleasing to the Russians. So it is a very important tightrope walk that the Ministry of Defense has to do between an age-old partner, the Russians, and the aspiring top partner who in the last decade or so has anyway topped the Russians as far as the last decade sales go, and that is to the Americans. And where does this put the traditional contenders, the Saabs, the French with the Rafale, and even the British, where the minister was there trumpeting everything Britain has to offer, you know, from Rolls-Royce engines to BAE systems and all that. So give us a sense of the non-American players in the Aero India and what they are trying to do.
Maroof, you mentioned about the supply chain disruption which has happened for components, parts, etc. from Russia and also Ukraine. Indian industry has a characteristic of adapting and increasing its capability very quickly.
Ji.
And we have seen it in the past, and you mentioned about automobile as a market. From the early 80s till today, we have traveled a long way, and most of the vehicles which are here are all indigenized. Now here also we are in the private industry and also in the DPSUs wanting to very quickly fill up the gap which has been created by the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the supply disruption affecting us. Even the Russians are asking for spare parts, etc., which they need, and probably we'll be supplying to them in a reverse mode. As far as the higher technology is concerned, we are starting from a point which you mentioned. We are on a scale of 1 to 10, probably somewhere on 6 and 7. Things will not happen overnight, but I am very positive that we will certainly go to 7, 8 and 9 in some period of time, given the agility and adaptiveness of Indian industry. And I think C295 is a modest beginning, and in the next 10 to 15 years, we will see changes and capability enhancement of Indian industry, particularly in the private sector, which will be transformative.
So that I'd like to share your optimism, and let's hope all works out in the transformative game that we, sometimes I quote a line that I read on a book that was focusing on missile power. It's called Trappings of Power, in which the authoress mentioned that the Indian missile program is like a juggernaut that cannot be contained. I think our defense industrial complex program should soon become a juggernaut that nobody can contain. अगर आपके अंदर काबिलियत है तो आके जुड़ जाइए, नहीं तो साइड में खड़े होकर ताली बजाइए. I think that is what is going to be the message soon that the Ministry of Defence will give. Back to you, Air Marshal, sir. Now, I want you to explain to me a bit. We are a bit tight on time, so because the DRDO. Now, DRDO is a mammoth Government of India undertaking. It has been doing exceptionally good work of late. Some of the products that were mentioned by you and Mr. Mishra, which includes their, of course, the LCA is very much in the news, and it's now become quite acceptable to the IAF despite earlier reservations. But there are the helicopter programs. There is also the DRDO AVAX initiative as well as the Tapas UAV. Please give me a sense of that.
Yeah, just take 2 sentences about the Rafale and the Russians, and then I'll answer your question. Firstly, I must tell you that we bought only 2 squadrons of Rafale, but we brought ground infrastructure for 2 bases, which means 2 more squadrons can come in. We have also had one-time enhancements, India-specific enhancement to the aircraft, and we have built a certain amount of package. So my contention is that purely from Indian Air Force's point of view, and not to get too many more types of aircraft, one school of thought is to buy some more Rafales. And if the Navy, which we believe is also showing interest in Rafale Air, then the combined numbers could be very significant, and then it will become worthwhile make in India. So this I will leave it at that. Russians, yes. Our Russian connections continue. Su-35 is said 45% of Indian Air Force is Su-30, and we had bought the SA-400 already with them. I met the CART 226 people also who were trying to push. Of course, they're trying to push Su-35 also in the MMRCA context.
Just coming back to Su-35, we were joint partners in their manufacture. Then we pulled out of the deal.
No, that was FGFA, which we pulled out. Su-35, we were never part of it.
But I thought we were in that next generation fighter.
Yeah, next generation fighter. Okay. 5th generation fighter, FGFA. We were partners, but we pulled out for technical reasons.
Right.
Okay. Now, back to your question. DRDO, you know, we have a mixed past. We have a great future. This is how I look at DRDO. You know, DRDO's missile program, you already mentioned, that has been a big success. It's an absolute international class, air-to-air, surface-to-air, the anti-ballistic, everything. We are a big success there. UAVs, been a weak area. You know, till today, we have not inducted any worthwhile UAV from DRDO. AD has been making UAVs for long. Tapas was flying. Single Tapas. It's had own sensors. We could see the entire air show from the picture that was being transmitted from there. So Tapas is now getting ready, and I hope all the spec. There are some specifications. I don't want to get into the details, which are not yet fulfilled. But I believe we are very close, and soon Tapas should be ready. We also know that the Ghatak UCAV, the scale model, has already flown last year, and work is in progress. But we need quick inductions. You know, we are short of UAVs. We have Israeli UAVs. The Americans are offering, General Atomics is offering UAVs. So there is a lot of action in UAVs, and I hope that we go the India route as early as we can, because that's very important.
But I also have a counter to that. I mean, and this might go against the stated line officially. The fact of the matter is that you shouldn't be so hung up on Atmanirbhar Bharat that you're not inducting an equipment which is required to address a threat that's facing you on your front lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Chinese and the Pakistanis have a substantial UAV presence, and we all know now that is the future in many ways, also of land warfare. Mishra Saab, last quick question. There are a number of futuristic technologies that are being talked about in terms of coming in to partner in India. Going back to my first question to you, that the Raksha Mantri had said that we must have partnerships, we must build, we must, have the whole chemistry in place to do all sorts of things. Which are the companies you saw in Aero India could be easily go-to options with futuristic technologies?
See, for futuristic technologies, Europeans the whole Western country companies, all of them are looking at us in a very favorable manner. As far as Indian industry is concerned, and you also asked about what SIDM has been doing about these transfer of technology, etc. We have recently got 100 companies, Indian companies, to join hands with Lockheed Martin.
Okay, wow.
For their indigenization program. And the outcome has been so motivating from both sides, from the Indian companies as also from the reaction from the Lockheed Martin side, that they want us to facilitate much more. So all these companies who are coming as a seller to India, and of course they have offset obligations also to meet, are now looking at the Society of Indian Defence Manufacturers to facilitate that aspect.
Okay. So thank you very much for both your considered views, one straight as a fighter pilot and one as somebody who represents the very, very large manufacturing family that exists now. And I'm sure our viewers would have gained from your expertise and got another element and another insight into Aero India, where largely the earlier media coverages were only about the speed, height, weight, cost of all sorts of platforms that were there. But why are they here? What do we expect from them in future? And how India needs some of them to gallop into the future. Until our next episode, thank you for watching and thanks to both of you.